One of the things we're working on early here, though, is requirements. Requirements basically is something you've probably covered in the class already. Most of you will not be seeing this for the first time here. But when we talk about it for us, it's absolutely vital that we have requirements, and it's vital to look at requirements from the viewpoint of testing. Testing needs requirements. Testing lives on requirements. Testing is driven by requirements. We need to know exactly what's expected from a system, and it needs to be written down to give us the test criteria that we can all agree to. So without good requirements, tests can be misinterpreted and built entirely for something that nobody expected to be built. The best case scenario is the test is just off base and the system was actually built correctly and I just have to quickly rewrite some test cases. The worst case scenario is all the software that was built is junk and the test cases were right. So that's why we want to write requirements down and give us a point to interpret and check and talk about those tests. It's also why we want to, by the way, review test cases and make sure that the system built is matching the test cases we want to. So in this class, we start by playing the role of a requirements analyst. And we're going to document these things in week 3, but I don't want to throw all this stuff later on, so I want to talk about what requirements look like now, so we have that in our back pocket, and we can use that going forward. So we're going to capture very specific requirements, and you can do that in any way you've learned how to, and as I said, you can reuse requirements of places you've used before as you come up with your projects, but I want to suggest to you that good requirements in this case, the best requirements in the case of testing comes from use cases. Because use cases give us that interaction between a user and a system that really describe what most black box test cases look like. It says, okay, I'm sitting at a keyboard, I have a mouse in my hand, what do I click on first? Where am I going to go after that? And what's the system going to do in response? A use case is going to describe the screens, the actions, the inputs, and the outputs that the user is going to interact with. It doesn't need to be super formal for us, but I think it's a very useful way to describe what would end up eventually being our test case anyway. If we write a use case, really all I'm adding to my test case is, okay, on the screen that was described in the use case, put in the values 10, 52, pyramid, and hit the round blue button. Okay, it's kind of like Mad Libs at that point. The story is written for us. We're just filling in a few interesting words that come up. So as an example, use cases look kind of like this. It defines the actors, the people who are participating in the system at that point, which helps us define our test case. Who do we need to have interact with this? The preconditions, which helped us tell us how do we set up our test cases. So before this test case, I have to register a user account. And I have to create a collection for the items to go in. So I know exactly what I need to do before I start testing, because I need to do it before I can have this functionality be working. And then the post conditions tell me exactly what I expect to see when the test is completed. So if the test is going to be successful, the item will have been saved locally and attempted to be sent to the server. All right. So you can see already, use cases are a great way to directly relate to how testing is going to happen. So then here's the primary flow. You got 3 steps. The system presents the user with a new item screen. The user enters data for item name, description, price, blah, blah, blah. And then the system acknowledges that the product was added and shows the user a blank screen for the next product. So already it kind of looks like a test case in itself. It's describing exactly what it wants. So all I need to do for a test case is I say, oh, on step 2, the item name is, bam, banana. The description is a yellow peeled fruit. The price is 66 cents a pound. The identifier is 4011. I don't know if that's the same by you, but every grocery store I go in, bananas are 4011 unless you get organic ones. The date of purchase is today, and here's a picture of a banana to upload for you. So that's how you can make a test case quickly by starting with making use cases initially. Use cases can also describe some of the variations, the alternative flows, and this aligns really great to test case because I have a test case that covers the primary flow, and for each alternative flow, each exception flow, each business rule, I can have an additional test case I want to cover, an additional pass or fail criteria. So on step 3, I have a primary flow that says they do what they normally do, or I have an alternative flow which says they say view all items. They press a different button. All right, there's a different test case right there. The exception flow says things that could go wrong. When I typed in, I validated a business rule. So I didn't provide a name, or I didn't provide a date of purchase in the past, but I had made it in the future. Okay, I can't buy something in the future on this site. So there's ways of creating test cases and seeing them right away from the requirements. I don't have to make them up. They're pretty much captured right there. So if you don't love use cases, you don't know how to use them, you don't feel like learning them right now, it's okay. You can take whatever approach works best for you. So the ones you probably are used to is seeing quote unquote bullet points, which typically have some numbering system that goes with them. Either they're part of a table with numbers, or they number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or what I'll call numbered shalls. So bullet points is I create a discrete set of shall-based requirements that I'd go off and write. The system shall allow users to add items to collections. The items shall consist of description, name, price, an ID number, blah, 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 blah. The system shall require the name when putting in items. The system shall demand that dates are in the past and not in the future from the time when they're put in. Okay, that says the same thing. It just means that you as the reader have to connect the dots of what that means for a system. Instead of telling me what that flow is, you're telling me the rules by which now I have to go design that thing in my head. Some would say that, well, it's the job of designer to design and not the other. Well, that's a fuzzy line. I mean, we're talking about documentation, not people. People build documentations. I can collaboratively build a document. I don't have to have one person be alone in building a document. So that goes. So that's what the bullet point approach to that. The biggest thing on bullet points is having some way of identifying each shall. As I said, the easiest way is put them in a table and have some numbering system as part of a table. The alternative approach is to be a bit more descriptive. Use the numbered shall approach. The bullet points aren't super expressive. As you said, they're individual, separate, shall not allow products without names. Instead, we can do something where we just write out text, kind of like a use case. The system shall allow users to input items. Those items will include name and description and things like that. Name is a required field for that, while dates are required to be in the past. Okay, that's a full description. And what I would do is each time I encounter and want to put a requirement inside of there, I put a little superscript number inside of there. And there's actually tools that allow you to tag it. It's almost like a meta tagging approach to finding your requirements. Either one's appropriate. The question is just how do you want to do traceability? Again, the thing that both these approaches lack is they don't demand you to create a cohesive systematic approach to describing user interactions and breaking up the primary flow from the secondary flow, but they're more traditional. There might be what you're more used to, what you've seen more often, are perfectly acceptable. One thing to think about is non-functional requirements, because we might need to test some of those. Non-functional requirements are basically how fast, how much, how secure, how ease of use the system must be. They're pretty much always done through some sort of bullet point approach. There's no use case way really to deal with non-functional things because they're not functional, and use cases are functional. So think about them. If you have questions, we can go over them. It's not a huge deal for me that you do performance testing inside of here in any detail. So you can kind of think about it from this is the type of stuff that would be part of the performance testing, but not something we're going to dive into a lot of detail.